Maybe you're feeling the itch to try something different. Maybe your job is relocating you, or maybe you just got matched for your residency program. Whatever the reason is, you're thinking about coming to Michigan. Now, before you start packing your bags and saying goodbye to your old stomping grounds, let's talk some logistics. Moving to a new state is a big undertaking, and to ensure it's a smooth transition, there's a few steps that I'm gonna recommend you follow. We're gonna talk everything from neighborhood research, finding a new house and selling your current one, if you have one, and all of the little things that you might forget in a cross-country move. Now, I am a big fan of checklists and a timeline, so I've put together both for you to help you navigate the relocation process like a pro. The first, and I think most important step for moving out of state is research. You'll want to start about 2 to 3 months before you plan to make a move. This is where you're going to collect all of your information about the areas you're considering, your moving logistics, and wrapping things up where you currently live now. Do your research on different cities and neighborhoods in Michigan around where you're going to be living. It can be a little overwhelming, so try to break it down, factoring in the most important things first. So maybe you're moving here for friends and family, or you're relocating for a job and want to live close by, or maybe you're relocating for school at the University of Michigan or the health system nearby. Whatever it is, start there and then zero in on a few areas that you're drawn to. You want to make sure that it's going to fit your lifestyle. In Michigan, we have a lot of little towns that are a quick drive to the big cities. So if you'll be working in Ann Arbor or Detroit, you have a lot of surrounding options to choose from. I usually find that people want to live within about 30 minutes from their work. So if you're going to be working in the Ann Arbor area, I would do some research on Saline, Ypsilanti, Dexter, Chelsea, Brighton, Milan, and maybe even Canton. That's kind of that 30-minute mark. If you're moving here for the University of Michigan hospital system and you want to be as close to the hospital as possible, I would recommend focusing on the northern half of Ann Arbor or towards Dexter and Chelsea. You'll be a little bit closer than if you were trying to commute from cities that are further south or west, like Ypsilanti, Saline, or Milan. And you won't hit as much traffic as you would if you're in the Brighton area. If you're working closer to Detroit, some of the cities I would research would be Royal Oak, Birmingham, Farmington, Novi, Troy, and Plymouth. You'll also find that in the Metro Detroit area, a lot of these cities have counterparts that have the same name but add hills to it. Some examples of this are Farmington and Farmington Hills, Bloomfield and Bloomfield Hills, Rochester and Rochester Hills. They are technically different cities, but don't get in the weeds on this. You're gonna get a similar vibe and lifestyle in both places. And speaking of lifestyle, try to picture what you want your daily life to look like and factor in things like amenities, school districts, and things to do. Whatever is really important to you to have nearby. If the school district is important, contact the schools directly and see if you can talk to the principal about the curriculum and get your questions answered directly from them. A website is great and it'll give you some basic information, but I also always think that it's important to hear directly firsthand from them, and then you can build a relationship with that school community as well. This is also a great time to plan a visit to Michigan if you can swing it. After you've done some research, you'll be able to drive the neighborhoods and try out a few restaurants and coffee shops and really see what areas you're drawn to. You might even end up eliminating some when you see them in person. It might just not be your vibe, and that's okay. This is also a good time for us to schedule a few showings so that you can get a feel for the homes that are in the area too, because they do differ on areas. Depending on where you're coming from, it might be shocking how much more you'll get in your home. I hear this a lot from people that are moving from California, New York, or the East Coast. the cost of living here is significantly less, so you have more wiggle room to get what you really want in a home. While you're also in the research phase, you're gonna want to assess your finances and budget for your move, including moving expenses, housing costs, and any other upfront expenses that could come up. Moving companies vary greatly, and it really depends on how much help you want with your move. Are you going to pack everything up yourself and rent a trailer that you drive yourself? Or are you going to have someone pack your things and move them for you? When you talk to these moving companies, they'll be able to give you quotes for these different options, and you'll likely want to get on their schedule as soon as possible. I find that you can more easily change the date with them if plans change, rather than waiting to get on their schedule at all. If you're moving for work, you can also ask your employer for some relocation assistance. A lot of times, if they are the ones that are having you move, they'll offer you something to cover that cost. Now, on the real estate side of things, this is also a good time to begin asking yourself questions like, do I need to sell my current house to qualify for another home? Or will we be keeping our current house as an investment property rather than selling it? Or maybe you're a first-time home buyer and you want to know, what am I going to need in place to purchase my first home when I move here? You'll want to talk to a realtor like me and a lender to strategize on what is going to be the best steps for you to take. We also want to time this strategically to make this as smooth of a process as possible for you. I have a great lender that I can recommend that has helped multiple of my clients make a cross-country move. And as a side note, if you are in the medical field, you may qualify for some great lending programs that he has and he can share with you. And on top of that, my team has a special program for medical professionals and other heroes like teachers, police, caregivers that may help you with some of your upfront costs. We give back 25% of our commission to you as a thank you for being a hero. So I always recommend speaking to a lender before you begin the moving process so that you can get pre-qualified for your loan, and then you ensure that there's no surprises once you're already in this moving process. If you are moving for work, the lender's going to ask you to provide a letter from your current employer that includes what your new salary is going to be so that they can factor that into your mortgage approval. Now is the time to have that conversation with your employer so that you can get that letter in your hand, because sometimes it can take a while for them to get it to you, and you don't want that to be the one thing you're waiting on that's holding up your moving. Step 2 is the planning phase. When you're about 6 to 8 weeks out, you'll want to ensure you're pre-approved for a mortgage for your new home. This is going to give you a clear understanding of your budget and really streamline the home buying process for you. This is when you want to plan out the sale of your current home and the purchase of your new home to correlate together if you are selling a home. Now, the next phase is the prep phase, and at this point, you want to be about 4 weeks out from your move. This is really what I would call like go time. You've got your house under contract, and hopefully you've also found a house here in Michigan at this point. Now, once your offer is accepted, we will work on completing the necessary paperwork and the inspections for your Michigan home purchase. You'll be starting to think about packing your things up, so it's a good time to sell, declutter, get rid of things that you don't need anymore. A good place to start is by packing up seasonal stuff and things that you aren't going to need in the short term before you move. The fourth phase is wrapping up all the little things that you never think about when you decide to make a move. I would recommend getting all of these done about 2 weeks before you move so that it's not too overwhelming right in those final days, and it also isn't too far out as well. This is when you're going to want to schedule your utilities to be turned off at your current home and turned on at the new one. You can set that ahead of time. You're going to want to also update any memberships and accounts with your new area in mind too. This might mean transferring your gym membership to a new local branch, changing your banks, or letting them know what your new address is going to be, and canceling things that you're not going to be using anymore. You can also forward your mail and choose when to have that start sending to the new home, so you can do that ahead of time too. Anything to keep it stress-free. If you plan to take some time to unpack and settle into your new home, this is also a good time when you want to request any time off that you might need with your job as well. If you plan to buy new furniture, this is a good time to pick out what you'd like and schedule a delivery date. I think it's always good to schedule it for a few days after you get the keys. That way that if anything needs to adjust slightly, you have some wiggle room. If you can't tell, I'm a big fan of budgeting in a little bit of wiggle room so that you're never caught being overly stressed during the process and having to rush to do anything. It's not a perfect science, so it's best to have some time built in. Moving your current furniture can sometimes be more work than it's worth. It might not fit in your new space, or it might not have the same look. Maybe you bought it to fit in a certain room or a certain style. Not to mention, it costs a lot to move. You could cut down on your moving expenses if you leave your current furniture and just buy new instead. Real estate transactions typically take about 30 days to complete, but I think it's always best to give yourself a little bit of wiggle room here. If needed, we can always negotiate time for you to stay in your current home after your new home is ready. You can actually ask for up to about 60 days after closing if needed, which means that we have roughly 90 days to work with if we need to. Step 5, you've finally made it to moving day. You are moving to Michigan. This is when you for sure want to be down to living in a suitcase, and you'll want to do final checks around your current home. Make sure that it's been thoroughly cleaned and that the moving truck is all loaded up and ready to go. And don't forget to load the truck backwards so that anything that you need that is essential is packed very last. That means that it'll be the first thing that gets off the truck and the most accessible to you. Don't forget to check for any spare keys, garage door openers. These types of things get accidentally taken all the time. Leave them on the kitchen counter. Do a double check in each cabinet, in the garage, attic, shed, anywhere that you might have left items potentially. Now, once you get to your new home, ensure that your utilities are on, and then I always recommend changing the locks too. You just never know who might have had an extra key, or if the sellers might have forgotten to pass on a key to you as well. The final step is to settle in and get to know your new city. Whether you moved to the Ann Arbor area or Detroit, and whether it was to be closer to family, your job, or maybe for the University of Michigan, I hope you love exploring the area. You can check out some of my other videos to get a feel for some cities in Southeast Michigan and my recommendations of places to try and cities to check out. I've done a few cross-country moves myself and helped a lot of clients do the same, so I know how stressful it can be to relocate to a totally different place. If you're ready to take the plunge and make Michigan your new home, don't hesitate to reach out to me. In my bio below, you'll find a link to my calendar where you can actually schedule some time for us to talk, whether you're ready to move a week, a month, or a year from now, or you're just starting your research. And for more videos about Michigan, be sure to subscribe to my channel too.